Have you heard?
Have I heard what, Elliot?
Thumb cramp is back.
Oh, thank God. I've been living with that thumb cramp for years. Oh.
Boom.
Chromatic.
ModRetro.
First edition.
Tetris.
And that S that everyone used to draw.
This is the Chromatic by ModRetro, and boy is this exciting. These have been announced and showcased for the past year or so, and finally I was sent one, and I think they're now actually available to just buy, and this is the new thing, Stuart. It's no longer the analog pocket that is long in the no, I'm joking, it's still very relevant, as you will soon discover. But yeah, this is the ModRetro Chromatic, the ultimate way of playing your Game Boy games.
Right, so we're looking at extremely prestige type, high-end, very expensive, super-duper Game Boy.
Exactly, you couldn't have put it any better. Feel that, Stuart.
Oh, it's all cold. It's made of metal.
It is. It's made of magnesium alloy.
Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? And sapphire glass screen, I heard.
A sapphire crystal screen, which is obviously beautiful. But all of these things do come at a price. And that price is 20... Or we actually worked out after shipping, £15 less than the analog pocket, which is going to be something that we will compare this to very carefully later on in the video. We've actually got Stuart's one just over to the side. That is obviously the kind of flagship ultimate premium Game Boy, and then this has come in quite a little bit later and does less.
It's got a different mission statement, hasn't it?
I think so. I think that's kind of the ultimate. The idea of it was really for it to be an ultimate Game Boy Color. That was what the founder of the company, Palmer Luckey, wanted. He wanted to make the absolute best Game Boy Color, and he's done an astonishing job. You cannot take away from how beautiful it is. I mean, it's hard for it to come across in the video, especially we've got the black one. They made lots of different colors. And in all of the pictures and videos I've seen, they kind of look a bit plasticky, and it's the design of this is it's a little bit cheap for me. You know, the colours in the corner.
It is a funny one. Reminds me of the very early ZX Spectrums that came out. All had a sort of stripy rainbow in the corner. But yeah, I get it. They all look a bit off with that. Do you know what I mean? If you cover them up, they all look better.
Yeah,
I appreciate it's the branding, but I think the Midnight one isn't too bad though. It's
I
subtler.
agree. But it in person, holding it in your hands, it's weighty, it's metal, it is beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous, and the buttons feel great. So premium flagship, the best, ultimate. That is what they've gone for, and that really is what this is. It is absolutely gorgeous. I do like it a lot.
And they're very heavily marketing it on with the nostalgia factor, because I mean it's made to look like a school textbook with doodles on it.
Yeah,
it really is that simple, isn't it? It is going back in for people who had a Game Boy Color at school. I imagine I was too old. Because I'm an old man, Elliot. I'm so old now. Help me.
Don't say that, Stuart. Age is but a fact.
A crippling, monstrous fact.
Yeah, it came in this, which is a bag, which has ModRetro on it, and it says,
okay,
it's Jansport. So it's a nice bag. Thanks, Palmer. Yeah. And inside it is another nostalgia.
Oh, you saved this one.
The purple unicorn.
Did this originally come as like black foil and you had to scrape it off to make the colour
so.
picture?
I don't actually think I had something like that, but I definitely remembered it, and then watching Linus's video, he did confirm that is what that was. But yeah, so they're really playing on nostalgia. That is massively what they're going for. And inside here there is a very useful card which has lots of details about it, so thank you for that. But there's also this, which is like a class homework course kind of thing. So they really are going for... This is just the press review kit.
I see. So it's keeping up the whole school bag thing by pretending it's coursework.
Nostalgia.
Yeah.
So
and set by somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, because look, they've spelt the Game Boy as all one word, and it was 2.
I hate them.
As well you should.
No, yeah, so they've obviously really kind of tried to create a nostalgic environment for us to now explore their product in. So we've cast our minds right back to the 90s, and this is it. This is it. They've gone straight in for the Game Boy Color. Obviously, plays Game Boy games as well.
Yep.
And a nice, I would say, if they were going to do one, I think that the Game Boy Color is probably, the best one to go for. Otherwise, it would have ended up with some big chunky DMG thing, or a DMG that was this size but only played Game Boy games. That would have been weird. Yeah, Game Boy Color. That was the right decision, and it is absolutely beautiful. But there's just a few things for me that I find myself kind of questioning, like, would I have actually bought this if I'd not been a YouTuber and they sent it to me for free?
I mean, I haven't bought one because they didn't send me one for free, and it's too expensive, basically.
Yeah.
That's my quick review, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Well, you've also got the Analog Pocket.
I
which
do. You see, this is what I use for my Game Boy Guffs, but this slightly different beast, we'll come onto that. But, as this is a thing, it is beautifully put together. Magnesium alloy, was it?
Yes. Is magnesium alloy? Was that it? I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be pure magnesium. That would be chemically problematic. And it's sapphire crystal screen.
Yeah,
and everything.
a beautiful sapphire crystal glass lens to protect their proprietary homemade.
Oh yes,
they've
their
actually
super screen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So my understanding is they've literally manufactured a screen with identical color matching and blah blah, but also the same amount of pixels as the original screen back in the day, 160 by 144, I believe,
as confirmed on this card. 160 by 144.
Right,
so it's literally a 1:1 pixel recreation, but obviously using modern screen technology, beautifully backlit. It is like gorgeous.
You've also got the original expansion port on the side.
Yep.
For your old. In fact, that was pretty much only for link cable, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Well, and the worm light.
How could I forget the worm light?
I don't know how you could forget.
I mean, you don't need that these days because you can actually see the screen. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Headphone out, USB-C.
Well, it actually doesn't come with a rechargeable battery.
Oh.
And I think they're going off of like nostalgia factor, but also I think that's probably just to get it off into the customer's hands for the most affordable price, because they've claimed that they're going to be releasing at a later stage a lithium-ion rechargeable battery, and actually when you take these all out, you can see that there are some pins there, which could probably be for that. And then also when you take this apart, this whole battery connector is just on a little like brick connector.
Oh, so you could literally open it up, unplug, plug something else in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So possibly that's why, but this isn't actually to recharge it currently, and it doesn't recharge if you were to put rechargeable batteries in. But what it does do, besides updates, like firmware updates, is it allows you to capture the video footage.
Oh, right. Well, like a video source, as if it was a capture device or a webcam or something.
Yeah, it hasn't got like video out. We confirmed this earlier. We were looking around on the internet. We couldn't actually see that people had given us clarity on that, but we plugged it into a TV using an HDMI adapter.
2 different ones.
Yeah, and we just tried straight USB-C monitor, and that didn't work. But then when we plugged it into a recording software, it came up as an input.
Yeah. So it's not something you can plug straight into your telly, but you can get video out of it.
Yeah, which is a shame because, like, obviously I know the dock for the Analog Pocket is a little bit extra, but then you do have the HDMI out and wireless controller capability. So this does have it, but kind of with some strings attached. I really personally do like the device. Like, I do think that it is something that I would absolutely love and play on and enjoy, but I think there's just a couple of things that kind of bring it down, and there's some of the things that people haven't actually mentioned yet in other videos. Mainly the big one for me is the fact that it only plays Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges, and not even all of them.
Not even all of them.
Not even all
But
of
it's
them.
an FPGA and hardware simulation, and it's meant to be accurate and all that guffs.
Well, you're going to know more the reason why I wouldn't play these cartridges than me, because I don't understand.
So we tried a lot of cartridges thing, and nearly everything worked. So one of the problems is, obviously, if you want to play loads of Game Boy Color games or Game Boy games, you're going to need all the original cartridges,
Yeah.
which are getting a bit pricey and not that easy to find these days. But of course, there is always the option of the EverDrive, which works in it fine. Mm-hmm. And this is something you can put an SD card in, and it just has all the Game Boy and all the Game Boy Color games or whatever you put on it, and away you go. Now, there were some weird things released for the old Game Boy, weren't there? And it's been very good on the compatibility in general. This weird flash cart I have from back in the day worked fine. This dodgy copy of Shantae, which is totally from AliExpress or something, worked fine. This god-awful lilac-coloured Super Game Colour Advanced Piracy cartridge worked fine. This weird game that I think was on the front of a magazine, I think is how you bought these back in the day, worked fine. And even Game USA Colour, possibly the fakest cartridge you can imagine, worked fine. And this incredibly early one where you have to switch games by pressing a button on the top, even that worked. So compatibility seemed about 100%.
Until these, the Sashen cartridges.
So these were very unofficial Megaduck games.
Yeah, so they were
Game Boy.
ported from a failed system called the Megaduck. Well, failed is an argument, I suppose, but it wasn't famous, as you've probably never heard of it. And when
It was also called the Cougar Boy.
yeah,
That's not a
it
joke.
was. And also the Good Boy.
Was it?
Yeah, the
I
Good
didn't know
Boy.
that one.
Yeah,
I want a good boy.
I've got a good boy. But yeah, so basically the system itself didn't do that well, and then they ported all the games onto these multi-carts, and famously Snake Roy, one of the all-time greats.
Oh, Snake Roy. You can't beat Snake Roy.
You can't beat
Just-
Snake Roy.
well, you kind of
You
can.
can't.
Oh,
On
yeah,
this-
you can't. Yeah. For whatever reason, these do not work in it. That's all you get, isn't it?
That is all you get. That is all you get.
It will work on obviously original hardware, which means it's not quite as accurate as we'd hoped. I mean, it does a good job with all this sort of miscellaneous stuff, but this is the one thing we couldn't find. However, they did work in the Analog Pocket.
They did, yeah.
Which makes me think, obviously, the Analog Pocket's simulation is slightly more accurate.
Yep.
Probably not in a way that really matters unless you want to play Snake Roy as part of a
Yeah.
4-pack. But
I was going to say,
there's not
it's-
many people out there with these Sashen cartridges.
It's a niche argument, but we were excited to just show off the fact that it doesn't actually play perfectly every single system. One thing though, Stuart, I don't know whether we just put the box, but it did come with Tetris, didn't it?
It did, and a really good version
Really,
of
really good
Tetris.
version.
Yes.
Did we just lob that into the stratosphere? Oh, it's here. It's here.
Hey.
I found it. So yeah. Also, sorry, Stuart. I'm just going to very quickly
Certainly.
unpack this. Also included some more batteries,
Yay.
a little charm, and then the chromatic Tetris.
Which is a superb version of Tetris.
Yeah.
I was genuinely really impressed by that.
But what I was trying to get at with remembering that this was included was obviously if you're going to buy this and it doesn't take ROMs, there's no way of adding ROMs to it. You have to then have your own games, and that's because this is going to be sold as a kind of a nostalgia thing to the general public, rather than it being like a very niche technical device that are going to be for like enthusiasts, more like I'd say the Analog Pocket is. You're then going to be expected to buy obviously the game cartridges for it because it's a cartridge device, and currently it comes with Tetris, but ModRetro are also like selling more games, or they're going to sell more games. They've certainly been advertising that they're working with lots of...
Do we know specifically any as yet, or is it still super early days?
I think Tetris is the only licensed one from what I know. There's also like more community-based games, but I do think that they're hoping to... They're at least claiming a lot of things. They are claiming a lot of things, but currently Tetris is the one that comes with it and the one that's available. And it is a nice game, and it works on actual Game Boy hardware as well. But yeah, for the most part, obviously, it is just a 1-1 Game Boy. It has all of the compatibility.
And it also does feel nice in the hand. Well, the only thing I didn't like, and I think not the only person who mentioned this, the little release thing for the door at the back kind of sticks in your finger a bit when you're holding it, which is a bit of a shame. But the controls are fantastic. The D-pad is brilliant. The buttons feel great. It doesn't feel much like an actual Game Boy Color to hold, because the Game Boy Color is very flat at the back. I apologise to everyone for this cheap replacement case, but I bought this for like £2 and it was scuffed up, so I had to get a replacement. But yeah, it just does not... well, they're not going for it to feel exactly like the old Game Boy Color,
I don't
to be
think
fair,
so.
I don't think.
And it is more or less like, if obviously it's got the kind of the portrait with the screen at the top, the buttons down below. Like it is a modern version of it. It's got that kind of the curve there to cater for the batteries and whatnot. So it is it's obviously very reminiscent of the original design, but it's not. I think the thing is
it's stickers coming off.
Yeah, that's
another one cheapy. This one I replaced the screen in, so this has got a modern or vaguely modern backlit screen.
But that's an
aftermarket
case as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I'm deeply offended, Stuart.
Good.
I've only modded 1,000 and use aftermarket cases all the time. Where were we? It's a lovely thing. What were you going to say, Stuart?
Well, there is something that I didn't like actually. It's a minor niggle, but right, Game Boy Color. There we are, cartridge in. ModRetro, cartridge in.
Yeah, it's got a...
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't disconnect or doesn't stop it connecting and break your game or anything.
Well, so we know. We've not been wiggling it as it's been on.
I did when you weren't looking. It was fine.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously a very minor thing, but I think that could have surely have been avoided somehow.
It is one of those weird things where if the device wasn't as expensive, you wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
But when something is A, massively expensive, and B, put forward as sort of the ultimate mega premium, you do start noticing every little thing.
I know. In fact, we haven't actually really properly turned it on. Let's show them the new Tetris Chromatic game. And the screen, it is gorgeous. They've done a great job. It is absolutely identical.
I just want to show the speakers because they're so good.
Fantastic, yeah. Comes out of the bottom, so it goes into your palm. Lucky. It goes into your palm really nicely, and then kind of bounces back up. So it's a well placed speaker, and it does really make a big difference to the one being on the front. I've noticed, having done lots of amp mods and whatnot. But yeah, the colours are all the same. Like it's done a proper recreation of the kind of the saturation of the colours. It's got no kind of like motion blur. It's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful.
And I disregard the claim that it's like exactly like the old Game Boy Color. It's far better, and it needs to be far better because well. We'll turn this on in a second and show you, but if you remember playing your Game Boy Color, you may remember you couldn't necessarily always play it in a room that wasn't very light. Yeah,
you have to have it at a certain angle. And that's the thing, I think, without question, if the Game Boy was made today, it would be kind of like this. It's going to play the cartridges, it's going to have a nice screen, probably would be USB-C rechargeable. That is slightly confusing, but they've obviously done that for some sort of reason.
Something Nintendo made wouldn't have this massively premium crystal sapphire screen and metal case. Obviously.
Yeah. But it's if Apple of a Nintendo were to make a Game Boy, or a billionaire who was a massive fan of Game Boys.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is absolutely stunning. One thing though, back onto the tiny little annoying things that haven't really been mentioned. When you plug in, imagine you've played it and it's getting a little bit low on battery. Wait till you see this, Stuart. This is quite something.
Okay. I'm going to take these two and put them in the Game Boy Color, and then we can show the screen.
That's a good idea. Oh, and by the way, the battery cover is lovely. Look, it's got these rubber sort of pieces here to...
That's like the vault door.
I know.
Of a safe or something.
I know, and that's the thing. They could have actually avoided the latch being here and put it there. They definitely could have done that, because it's just going to be in reverse. So they could have avoided that, but potentially all the people who manufactured it had little tiny hands.
Oh, little elves.
But yeah, so imagine you've just been playing this. By the way, 6 hours of non-stop battery on your brand new 3 AAAs, double A's rather.
Yeah.
The screen's actually flickering.
Ooh, it's not liking those batteries.
Wait, no, it's not liking those. Oh, it's gone off.
Yeah, those batteries are dead.
Wait, but we had no warning of... That was what I was trying to show.
Oh, it didn't show you a warning?
No.
Magic?
No, there's this really interesting design choice on the software of the batteries getting low. I'm just going to see if we can...
Right,
Here you
so-
go, this is a bit more promising. Right, I've put in another dead battery. There we go.
Ah, okay. So
It's no longer green.
Oh, it's gone amber.
Yeah, and there's a menu button on the side, by the way,
Yeah.
which allows
yes,
us
yeah,
to...
the battery.
Well, you can see there that the
Ooh.
battery's low.
Yeah,
Um,
that's not looking too good.
there's not a huge amount in here, by the way. You've got silent mode, which...
Okay.
Why you wouldn't just turn the volume wheel down, I'm not totally
Fair
sure.
enough. Yep.
You've got your brightness, and then you've got display.
What?
Frame
blend
blending.
on or 3.1?
I think
Off or 3.1?
I think that's something for the video out.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's making sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you've got use color correction, possibly.
Yeah.
Um,
So that makes it because it's isn't the screen slightly off for
Yeah,
RGB on the
right.
original Game Boy Color? Yeah.
and then you've got, in case you,
That's odd. I have no answer for that.
and then you've got your firmware stuff and some number of players. I don't know why.
Maybe you have to put that up if you're connecting via the link cable or something.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we're not actually getting to the thing that I wanted to show you, which is a little bit annoying.
So what happens is the
Well, up in the top right-hand corner,
Yeah.
a battery indicator comes up to say that you've got low battery,
oh yeah
and that kind of apparently gives you 30 minutes after that displays.
oh
it
cool.
says
So
that-
actually, so when your batteries are running low, you get a little thing in the corner that says battery's running low. You got 30 minutes left.
Yeah.
That's nifty.
except it stays there
What?
for the full 30 minutes.
Sure. And you can't turn it off.
You can't turn it off unless you replace the batteries, obviously.
What?
We
But
need
that means you've got a full 30 minutes of battery time with part of the screen included.
Yeah, but maybe,
weird.
I mean, it would really annoy me, but maybe it's for like the super die-hard Pokemon fans who are doing something really, really important, and it's trying to warn you, like, look, you need to replace them because it could be at any minute.
You must not, under any circumstances, forget about this.
I'm doing an offensively bad job here, but I think it was because I was talking as it started. Whatever excuse I can think of.
That sounds fair.
Uh,
I want to see this cartridge running on the original Game Boy Color.
I got some. I'm sad that. Okay, well, I wanted to show the
Never.
depleted batteries. There we go. I'll leave it on and see if that pops up in the corner.
And you can just about see that at home. I barely can here. Ah. Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, we've lost a bit of focus.
I genuinely can't see what's happening. It's the old thing of this is what it was actually like. This is what you remember it being like.
Yeah, that's totally it. It's like a past relationship. Jump cut because I managed to get it to show.
Hey!
There we go. So yeah, look, there we go. That is the battery indicator that I'm talking about.
That is very intrusive.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it wants to warn you, but like now you've got a substantial percentage of the battery life where the screen is occluded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've already also got the indicator on the bottom.
Yeah.
So was that needed?
Probably not, but there we are. Safety first.
Safety first, save your Pokemons.
Yeah.
So the obvious comparison to be made is with the Analog Pocket. It's a tiny bit more expensive, but a far more versatile unit.
So it was about £10 more, basically.
£10 more.
By the time we've got everything shipped and added up.
Yeah, the shipping on the Chromatic was ever so slightly more. To the UK at the very least, it could be different if you're in America or whatnot. But the retail difference in price was $20. But for including shipping to the UK, the difference was actually only £10. So that's kind of basically there's nothing in it. There's nothing in it. So there's no difference in price, but the Analog Pocket is just, in my opinion,
Plop.
infinitely better.
See, this is my Analog Pocket, and I do love it, and I play it all the time. I don't like the company Analog very much, I'll be honest with you. Mostly because I've got an Analog Duo,
Yeah.
which isn't that accurate, and they just kind of abandoned as soon as they made it, as far as I can tell. Premium. But this thing, yeah, has been quite wonderful. And it's also got your expansion port. Doesn't have the infrared, though.
It doesn't have the infrared, but I
Heartbreaking.
think that's kind of like they've done that as a nod to the to the Pokemon traders. Palmer being a Pokemon fan himself, and that's really cool. But is that going to be a big deal breaker for people? The infrared port.
Probably not, to be brutally honest with you. But hey, if you want the 100% experience, you'll have to buy one of these and not be able to see the screen.
Exactly.
That's just the way these things work.
But yeah, so I mean, obviously, one other thing, very, very small detail, but when the Analog Pocket was released, they were impossible to get a hold of, and people were having to buy them on eBay secondhand, or from someone who scalped it for 2 or 3 times the price. We don't know if that's yet the case with the ModRetro Chromatic, but it is kind of in Analog's company that they do make very small quantities of these things.
Yeah, and as a result, they do end up on the scalping market fairly frequently.
So hopefully that doesn't happen with these. But off of the production, there is an infinitely wider selection of colours and whatnot. So potentially there's going to be more availability of those.
But it is that thing of they are made for different audiences, in the sense that this is literally just Game Boy and Game Boy Color. And because of the amazing, very specifically made screen, it will never play anything else.
Exactly.
Because nothing else runs at exactly that resolution.
Exactly.
Neo Geo Pocket Color was close.
Very close.
But not, I think it was a little bit higher res, wasn't it?
Yeah, slightly more on the width.
So you can never put a Game Boy Advance game in that.
Exactly.
Because the screen cannot do it.
And that's one of the things I think that, people haven't really been mentioning is they're both FPGA, so they're both they're both from the actual game accuracy, the game running accuracy standpoint.
Well, maybe the Pocket's a little bit more accurate because it'll run Snake Roy.
Well, I mean, that, by default, I prefer it because of that. But hopefully in the actual hardware simulation side of things, it's going to be identical. But the thing is, the Analog Pocket has exactly 10 times the pixels. Exactly. So this is 144 by 160. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
And then that was 1440 by 1600. So you can then do certain things with the Analog Pocket to make it look exactly the same from a pixel standpoint as the Game Boy, including the pixel lines.
Yes, and we should point out, apologies to Linus from Linus Tech Tips, but he didn't have his setup properly in his video.
No, he had like a motion blur kind of thing.
It was really odd, actually.
Yeah, and obviously he didn't have the pixels enabled on the screen, and also you can change the color, saturation, to perfectly simulate the original Game Boy Color sort of color scheme of the screen, which is kind of like off colors. It's a little bit weird. Yeah, you see how it's not like vibrant colors? But this is actually the perfect recreation of it. 10 times the size, 10 times the pixel amount as this, but still...
It is that weird thing of this is technically far more accurate because it's exactly the same number of pixels, whereas this is 10 times it and making it look the same.
Yeah.
But in reality,
the
that's a very abstract difference, isn't it?
With the ability to then remove the cartridge and play Game Boy Advance.
This is it, yeah. You can play Game Boy Advance, Game Boy and Game Boy Color natively. There's also adapters for Neo Geo Pocket Color, Game Gear, and...
Lynx, is it?
It is Atari Lynx, yep, spot on. And you can also run open FPGA cores on it, which means you can run Super Nintendo games and God knows what through your SD cards.
Yeah, and that is it, isn't it? It's like, okay, great, you've gone for this beautiful screen. You can't argue. It's perfect. It's stunning. It's one for one, but it limits it.
Yes.
Massively.
It does massively limit it.
Forever.
And it's about the same. It's that thing of, if money is no object and you are a super rich retro game boy, then... fair enough. I mean, you're going to have that, and you're going to have that.
Yeah.
You know? And if ModRetro went on to make a Game Boy Advance one, or a Game Gear one or something, you'd probably buy all those as well.
Yeah.
But for those of us who do not live in Cash Town, that's a bit difficult.
One other thing as well, obviously, there's a couple of things like this, you have to buy that dock separately. So you can't actually compare them perfectly, one for one.
Yes, that's true. You can get at least video out Well, that's not true. Not video out, but it can pass the video to a computer.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you need the dock to do anything like that.
Yeah.
And the dock is pricey.
Well, it's $99, but this has a rechargeable battery, and this doesn't. And then they're going to sell the rechargeable battery possibly later, and I can't imagine it's going to be 20
It's
quid.
not going to be cheap.
Yeah.
No, realistically.
So there's kind of a few like things that go either side. I would personally probably rather have. What would I rather have? I'd rather have the dock, I think. I'd rather have the dock.
See, I don't like the dock for for two reasons. One, I can't afford one. But two, you can't play it while it's in the dock.
You can't, but then you can have the dock allows like Bluetooth controller connectivity.
By the time I'm doing that, why am I using a device with its own screen and all that kind of stuff? I think I'd be using a different methodology for that.
Yeah, possibly. This obviously doesn't have. Well, this is something we should get into. From the Bluetooth controller section. This doesn't have any ability to connect a Bluetooth controller to it. So for some people, they might want to hook it up to their TV and play it with a controller. Other people might want to have it plugged in on the TV and then use in the physical Game Boy.
But you can't plug that one into a TV because the video out has to be interpreted by a computer.
Yeah, and then if you did want to, I don't know, hook up your computer to a TV, for example, and then connect a controller, you can't. However, there is on the motherboard a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth module, which is not currently used in any way. So this gets onto the kind of ifs and buts section where it's like, if there's going to be the demand for it, or the actual mod sort of scene decides that they want to start opening this up to its full potential, it could become an even better thing. And one thing that they actually kind of sneakily put in the email to me, open it up and see the surprises inside, but they cannot market it for some reason. There's an SD card slot inside here, a micro SD card slot. Internally. And it's not used. It's not got an SD card slot. It's not got an SD card in it, but it's there. So the modders in the community may well start turning this into something else, but big problem, the screen is still limited to its display.
You're not going to be playing anything on it that isn't that exact resolution.
So there's just, I don't know. What do you make of that?
It's an oddity, isn't it? It's such a specific device. It is literally saying, this is the ultimate Game Boy Color, and it don't do anything else.
Yeah.
And that's your lot. That's it. And it's a lot of money for something that only does one thing like that.
Mm-hmm. It is very nice. And if you isolate it to just what it is and not comparing it to anything else, it's beautiful. But obviously that's not how the world works. There are other things available that make more sense.
This is a better value proposition, I suppose, for people.
Yeah. For me, it's just the fact that you can plug Game Boy Advance cartridges straight into it. Yeah. That I mean, instantly, I'm like, well, that's that decided then. You know,
and they still look great on it because it's still doing the proper, the scan line isn't the right word, but everything
pixel resolution pixel lines and stuff. A couple of things worth mentioning right at the end of the video because some people aren't going to care. They massively promoted this through Logan Paul.
Popular entertainer Logan Paul.
So because Palmer Luckey, for those of you who don't know, he created Oculus or he founded Oculus?
Yeah, the VR headset Oculus Rift, who's behind that.
And then that
Facebook. Then sort of started arms manufacture, slightly bizarrely, and then made a Game Boy.
So weirdly, you go on his Twitter and it's a bit of a jumble of things from light-hearted gameplay to slightly more serious topics, which is interesting. But obviously, all the money in the world and went for the biggest influencer in the world because he has the money to pay him. So Logan Paul's promoted it, which I think then suggests a great deal about who this has actually been marketed towards. It isn't necessarily trying to be in this market. It's kind of trying to just be a premium Game Boy.
Remind me of stop me if I'm wrong here. Didn't Logan Paul just smash up a Game Boy publicly once?
Yeah.
Attack! Excuse me, sir. The game seems to be malfunctioning. Mucho broken, though.
moving swiftly on.
Snake Roy?
Yeah.
Anything? Yeah, I don't know. That kind of irked me a little bit, but that's obviously quite a niche argument. But again, it highlights the fact that this is not really supposed to be for like the really nerdy Game Boy tech enthusiasts as much as I think it's just trying to be for the general public.
Because the thing about your nerdy Game Boy tech enthusiast is they're probably going to have built their own weird thing.
That's it as well.
Isn't there an FPGA board you can just slot into the Game Boy?
There is,
case
yeah.
now? Yeah.
Funny Playing, I think it was. They made they made a motherboard which has, they've completely redesigned it. So it's a motherboard that fits into a Game Boy like shell, but not an original Game Boy shell. It's a specific one for this FPGA, and there's no soldering required. So you buy your shell, you buy the board, the speaker and the screen. There's no soldering. It all just connects together, and you just screw it all together, and then you have this for half the price, but just in a plastic shell. So it's exactly this.
But you won't have your sapphire glass mega screen, surely.
But it does come with like a laminated glass display, and so is it worth $100 more for the Sapphire?
Well, there we are. The question is, does the Funny Playing thing play Snake Roy?
Oh shit!
We've got no way of knowing.
That's a really good point. I actually don't have one of those. Yeah. Well, that would be the decider then, wouldn't it? But yeah, I would. Another thing I would say as well that no one seems to have mentioned. I would have liked it if this was a lock button to pause the game, but it isn't. And also, it doubles down on the Analog Pocket as opening up the menu to allow you to save state.
Oh, yes, of course. There's no way of saving state.
No save states.
This is the pure experience. You can't pause it unless the game has a pause function, and there's no save states or anything. Which feels a bit of a step backwards these days, but
I know, and surely it had everything to be able to do that. It has the button, it has an FPGA,
but they don't want it. I think they just want to keep it as pure to the original Game Boy Color as possible, which not necessarily a good thing, but there we are.
So, to conclude, it's a lovely thing. It's a lot of money, but it's a lovely thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it feels like too much money for what it is, but it also doesn't. And what I mean by that is, I understand why it costs this because of incredible, machine bloody made case and custom screen and sapphire crystals, God knows what and all that. I understand why it's that much money, but for what it does, it feels like too much money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's because we can compare it against other things
which is about the same
like if
price.
that wasn't around and this and it had always been this and then suddenly that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, bloody hell, take my money.
Yeah.
But
and this was only £2 from a car boot sale. I think the case was £4 though, so £6.
And if you play it directly outside below the sun,
you still can't see it properly. But let's not worry about that. Yeah.
No, it's a lovely thing, and I would love for everybody to get the opportunity to at the very least play it because it does feel fantastic in it, and it does look fantastic. Only, in my opinion, in the grayscale color. All the other ones just kind of don't do it for me. But if you've already got an Analog Pocket, I don't think you need to rush out and buy one.
It's hard, isn't it? Yeah, you really don't.
Thank you for helping me out with this. I appreciate it a lot. I just thought that you would be the perfect person to discuss this with, given that you are a massive Game Boy enthusiast, but also a big Analog Pocket fan, which is kind of going to be the people watching this video, I imagine.
Yes, there's going to be immense crossover, put it that way.
Look at that. Finally found a way to balance it.
Oh, that's beautiful. I finally found a use for that bloody Game Boy Color there, but the screen in, look. Dun, 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 dun. Oh no! Oh, it's not going to work. No, because no, wait.
You must subscribe.